They laughed when Petty Officer Sarah Chen walked into the shooting range wearing her culinary uniform until she outshot every SEAL in the compound. The morning fog rolled thick across Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. Inside the galley kitchen, steam rose from industrial pots while the rhythmic clang of metal spatulas echoed off stainless steel walls. Sarah Chen moved with precision between stations, her hands choreographing breakfast for 300 sailors, with the same focus a surgeon reserves for the operating table. "Chen, more scrambled eggs on Station 3, barked Chief Culinary Specialist Morrison, a broad-shouldered man whose voice could crack concrete. "Yes, Chief," Sarah responded, her movements fluid and efficient. She'd spent 4 years perfecting the art of feeding America's warriors, and she wore her apron like armor. But beneath the grease-stained fabric beat the heart of something else entirely, something nobody in this kitchen would ever suspect. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, spoken on their small ranch in Montana 15 years ago. Breathing, posture, sight alignment, trigger squeeze. "Remember, Sarah, shooting isn't about power, it's about patience." David Chen had been a Marine Corps scout sniper in Vietnam. He'd returned home with medals he never displayed and skills he quietly passed to his daughter during weekend hunts in the Bitterroot Mountains. When he died of cancer 3 years ago, Sarah had enlisted, not into the infantry or special operations, but into the culinary program. Her mother needed the steady paycheck, the benefits, the certainty. "Dreams don't pay medical bills, honey," her mother had said through tears. "Your father would understand." So Sarah had buried her true calling beneath layers of biscuit dough and gravy. She became the best cook on base, reliable, invisible, forgotten. Outside the galley windows, the sharp crack of rifle fire punctuated the morning. The Naval Special Warfare Training Compound ran adjacent to the kitchen facilities, close enough that Sarah could hear the cadence of commands, the frustration in instructors' voices, the occasional whoop of success. "Damn SEALs think they're God's gift," Morrison muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Strutting around like they own the place while we're here before dawn, making sure they got protein in their bellies." Sarah said nothing. She'd learned long ago that silence kept you safe, kept you employed, kept you from standing out. She plated another 100 servings of eggs, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind drifted to the rifles she could hear but never touch. The breakfast rush ended at 800. Sarah was scrubbing a stock pot when Lieutenant Commander Jack Hawthorne strode into the kitchen, his SEAL trident gleaming on his chest. Behind him followed a camera crew, some Navy promotional team documenting training operations. "Chief Morrison," Hawthorne's voice carried natural authority. "We're doing a morale piece. Need to film in the galley for a few minutes. Show the support personnel that keep us running." Morrison straightened, suddenly aware of the cameras. "Of course, sir. We're honored." Sarah kept her head down, scrubbing harder. The last thing she needed was attention. "You there?" Hawthorne called out. "The one with the pot." Sarah's hands stilled. She turned slowly, meeting the lieutenant commander's gaze. He was probably 40, weathered by sun and salt, with the kind of calm intensity that came from 1,000 successful missions. "Yes, sir?" "How long you been cooking for us?" 4 years, sir." Hawthorne nodded, then something caught his eye. A small pin on Sarah's collar, barely visible beneath her apron strap. It was her father's USMC Scout Sniper insignia, worn privately, against regulations, as her only connection to what she'd lost. "That's a Scout Sniper pin," Hawthorne said quietly. The cameras kept rolling. Sarah's throat tightened. "It was my father's, sir. Marine Corps. Vietnam. Was. KIA, sir. Cancer, 3 years ago." A strange silence filled the kitchen. Even Morrison had stopped pretending to work. Hawthorne studied Sarah with new eyes, reading something in her posture that others had missed for 4 years. "Did he teach you?" Hawthorne asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. Sarah knew the safe answer, the answer that kept her invisible, kept her employed, kept her from hoping for impossible things. But her father's voice whispered again. "Never lie about what you can do, Sarah. Humility is good. False humility is cowardice." "Yes, sir," Sarah said clearly. "He did." Hawthorne's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "We've got a problem at the range. Exhibition shoot for these camera folks. 5 of my best marksmen can't hit a target at 800 yards. High crosswind, tough conditions." He paused. "You ever shoot at that distance?" Sarah's heart hammered. "Yes, sir, many times." Morrison stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, Chen is a cook. She's got kitchen duties. I'm asking her, Chief." Hawthorne never broke eye contact with Sarah. "Can you hit it?" The walk from the galley to the shooting range felt like a mile, though it was barely 200 yards. Sarah was still wearing her kitchen uniform, white pants, white shirt, apron stained with the morning's work. She'd removed her hairnet, letting her black hair fall to her shoulders, but she felt absurdly out of place as they approached the firing line. 6 Navy SEALs stood in a loose cluster, their rifles propped against sandbag barriers. They were the kind of men who appeared on recruiting posters, muscled, confident, radiating competence. When they saw Sarah approaching with Lieutenant Commander Hawthorne, confusion flickered across their faces. "Gentlemen," Hawthorne announced, "this is Petty Officer Chen. She's going to take a shot at our problematic target." The tallest SEAL, a man with a thick beard and lieutenant bars on his collar, laughed. "Sir, is this some kind of joke? We've got a promo shoot happening." "No joke, Reeves," Hawthorne cut him off. "Chen's father was Marine Scout sniper. She claims she can shoot." "Claims?" Reeves looked Sarah up and down, his smile condescending. "Sir, no disrespect to the Culinary Corps, but that's an 800-yard shot and 15-knot crosswinds. My boys have been trying for 30 minutes. This isn't a deer hunt in Montana or wherever." "Wyoming," Sarah corrected quietly. "And it was Montana." Reeves blinked. "What?" "My father trained me in Montana, sir. The Bitterroot Range. We regularly shot at 900 yards with variable mountain winds." The other SEALs exchanged glances, some amused, some annoyed. The camera crew zoomed in, sensing drama. Hawthorne gestured toward the rifle. "M110 semi-automatic sniper system. Loaded, ready to go. Target is a 12-inch steel plate at 800 yards. Wind is gusting between 12 and 16 knots from the northeast. None of my men have connected yet." He paused. "Care to try?" Sarah approached the rifle like a pilgrim approaching an altar. The M110 was beautiful, matte black, perfectly maintained, scope mounted with precision. She lifted it, checked the chamber out of habit, then settled into the prone position behind the sandbags. The moment she pressed her cheek against the stock, the world transformed. The laughter faded, the watching eyes disappeared. There was only the rifle, the target, and the wind. She closed her eyes and listened. Her father had taught her this. You can't see wind, but you can hear it, feel it, almost taste it. The Pacific breeze carried salt and moisture, swirling around buildings and obstacles, creating eddies and currents invisible to the eye but readable to someone who knew how to listen. "This is ridiculous," Reeves muttered behind her. "She's not even looking through the scope." "Shut up, Reeves," Hawthorne said quietly. Sarah opened her eyes and peered through the scope. The target appeared small, shimmering in the heat mirage rising from the California sand. She made minute adjustments to the scope, her fingers working from muscle memory. Elevation up 3 clicks. Windage right 5 clicks. Wait. Her breathing slowed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The rhythm her father had drilled into her 10,000 times. Between heartbeats, there exists a moment of perfect stillness. That's where the shot lives. She felt, rather than heard, the wind shift, a subtle drop in pressure against her left cheek. The gusts were dying down, entering a momentary lull. Her father's voice, "Wait for the wind to breathe with you, Sarah. It'll tell you when." Now. The trigger broke clean. The rifle barked. The recoil pressed against her shoulder like an old friend's embrace. 800 yards away, the steel target rang out with a clear, bright ping that echoed across the range. Complete silence fell over the firing line. Sarah stood, brushed sand from her white kitchen uniform, and carefully engaged the rifle's safety before setting it down. She turned to face the SEALs. 6 men stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to something like awe. Reeves was the first to speak. Sir, that was luck. She got lucky with the wind." Hawthorne's eyes never left Sarah. Was it luck, Chen? No, sir, Sarah replied calmly. The wind entered a 3-second lull. I waited for it. The wind entered a lull, Reeves repeated skeptically. You heard that? Yes, sir. You can hear the pressure change if you're listening. Another SEAL, younger with red hair and corporal stripes, stepped forward. I want to see her do it again. Same target. Nobody hits an 800-yard cold bore shot first try unless they're trained, Hawthorne finished. He looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read, respect mixed with curiosity and something else, regret maybe. Chen, the target's been reset. Take another shot. Sarah had already turned back to the rifle. This time she didn't close her eyes. This time there was no hesitation. She dropped into position, acquired the target, felt the wind, waited for the lull, squeezed. Ping. The target sang again. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. Sarah stood again, her movements precise and professional. She looked at Hawthorne. Permission to return to kitchen duty, sir. Chief Morrison will need help with lunch prep. Word spread through Naval Amphibious Base Coronado like wildfire. By 1100 hours, every sailor, SEAL, and support staffer had heard some version of the story. The cook outshot the shooters. Sarah tried to disappear back into the kitchen, but the damage was done. During lunch service, SEALs lined up with their trays not just for food, but to catch a glimpse of the woman who'd become an instant legend. Some nodded respectfully, others stared with open curiosity. A few looked angry, as if her success had somehow been an insult to their profession. Chief Morrison was furious for different reasons. You made us look like fools, he hissed as they prepped vegetables in the back prep area. You think the Navy keeps cooks around to show up special warfare operators? You think that's your job? Chief, I was following orders. Lieutenant Commander Hawthorne asked me to shoot. You could have missed on purpose. Morrison's face reddened. You could have been smart about it. Now you've got cameras and attention and... He trailed off, shaking his head. You just painted a target on your back, Chen. In 4 years you never caused problems. Now you're a problem. Sarah's hand stilled on the carrot she was dicing. I'm a problem because I'm good at something? You're a problem because you're good at something that isn't your job. Morrison's voice dropped. Listen to me. I've been in the Navy 22 years. I know how this works. You're a cook. You want to be a sniper. You should have enlisted as infantry, gone through selection, done it the right way, but you didn't. You chose culinary, and now you're making the rest of us look bad by pretending you're something you're not. The words stung more than Sarah wanted to admit, because Morrison wasn't entirely wrong. She had chosen culinary. She had taken the safe path, the practical path, and maybe she'd forfeited the right to dream of something more. Yes, Chief, Sarah said quietly. I understand. That evening, after her shift ended at 1800, Sarah returned to her barracks room, a cramped space she shared with 3 other junior enlisted women. She sat on her bunk, still in her uniform, staring at her father's scout sniper pin in her palm. What am I doing? She thought. Dad, what am I supposed to do? A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Lieutenant Commander Hawthorne standing in the corridor, out of uniform now, wearing civilian clothes, jeans and a faded navy t-shirt. Sir? Sarah straightened instinctively. At ease, Chen. Can we talk? Outside? They walked to a bench near the training compound, where the Pacific Ocean stretched dark and vast under the evening sky. For a long moment, Hawthorne said nothing, just watched the waves roll in. I pulled your file, he finally said. Top of your class in culinary school, perfect evaluations. 0 disciplinary issues. Model sailor. He turned to face her. But I also made some calls. Your father, David Chen. I found people who served with him. They said he was one of the best scout snipers the Marines ever produced. 347 confirmed kills in Vietnam. Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars. Sarah's throat tightened. He never talked about it. The good ones usually don't. Hawthorne leaned back against the bench. He taught you everything, didn't he? Everything he could. We'd go out every weekend, sometimes for 2-3 days. He treated it like a religion. Said shooting wasn't about killing. It was about discipline, patience, respect. She smiled sadly. When he got sick, we couldn't go anymore. And after he died, my mom needed help with bills. Culinary offered a signing bonus, guaranteed employment, stability. So you buried it, Hawthorne finished. You buried what you were born to do because life demanded something practical. Yes, sir. Hawthorne was quiet for another moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight Sarah hadn't heard before. 11 months ago, we lost a mission in Syria. Extraction went bad. We needed sniper overwatch to cover the retreat, but our designated marksman took a hit early. Buildings, civilians, hostiles mixed together. It was chaos. We had to pull out without completing the objective. Good people died because we didn't have the precision shooter we needed when we needed them. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. The Navy is changing, Hawthorne continued. Slowly, but changing. We're opening roles to women not because of politics, but because talent is talent. The battlefield doesn't care about gender. Bullets don't discriminate. He looked directly at her. I'm building a new unit. Specialized reconnaissance. Small team, high precision, surgical strikes. I need shooters who can think, who can adapt, who have the patience to wait 3 days in the sand for one perfect shot. Sarah's hands trembled slightly. Sir, I'm a cook. Right now you are. But you don't have to be. Hawthorne pulled a folder from his jacket. Papers, official documents. This is a transfer request. You'd go through the full selection course. No shortcuts, no special treatment. You'd be competing against men who've trained for this their entire careers. It'll be the hardest thing you've ever done. Most candidates fail. If you fail, you return to culinary duty with no second chance. He held out the folder. Sarah stared at it like it might explode. Why me? She asked. There are other shooters, better. There aren't better, Chen. That's what you don't understand. Hawthorne's voice was firm. I've seen thousands of shooters. I've trained hundreds. What you did today, cold bore, 800 yards, reading wind by sound. That's not normal. That's not even rare. That's once in a career exceptional. He paused. Your father gave you a gift. The question is whether you have the courage to honor it. The selection course began at 400 on a Monday morning that felt like the opening of war. 23 candidates assembled in the darkness. 22 men and Sarah Chen. They came from different Navy backgrounds, SEALs, EOD techs, intelligence specialists, even one hospital corpsman. All volunteers, all hungry. The lead instructor was Master Chief Vincent Carver, a man whose face looked carved from granite and whose reputation preceded him like thunder. He'd been selecting and training special operations personnel for 18 years, and his philosophy was brutally simple. Break them until only the unbreakable remain. You think you're here to learn to shoot? Carver's voice boomed across the formation. You're wrong. Any idiot can pull a trigger. You're here to learn if you have what it takes to be trusted with a rifle when American lives depend on perfect execution. Most of you will fail. Some of you will quit. 1 or 2 might die during training accidents, though we'll try to avoid that. He smiled without humor. Welcome to hell. The first week was designed to destroy the body. Endless runs in soft sand, ocean swims in frigid water. Log PT, carrying massive wooden telephone poles as teams until muscles screamed for mercy. Sarah had never been the strongest or the fastest, but her father had taught her something more valuable. How to suffer without breaking. Pain is temporary, he'd told her, but quitting is permanent. The men around her were physically superior. There was no denying it. They could carry more weight, run faster, do more pull-ups. Some tried to help her. Others clearly hoped she'd fail. But Sarah had learned in the kitchen how to work twice as hard to prove half as much. So she ran when her lungs burned. She swam when hypothermia clawed at her bones. She carried logs until her shoulders bled. By day 5, 3 candidates had dropped out. By day 10, 8 more were gone. On day 12, they finally touched rifles again. The morning was cold, fog rolling in from the ocean. The candidates stood at the 1,000-yard range, each behind a Barrett M82 50 caliber rifle. The target, a series of progressively smaller steel plates from 600 to 1,200 yards. This is an elimination round, Carver announced. "You'll shoot in rotation. Miss your target, you're done. Pack your gear. Go home." Sarah's heart hammered. This was the moment she'd been working toward, or working to avoid, for 12 days of hell. Around her, the remaining 11 candidates looked focused, confident, ready. These were men who'd been training for this opportunity their entire military careers. She was a cook who'd learned to shoot deer with her dying father. The first candidate stepped up, a SEAL named Morrison, no relation to her chief. He engaged targets at 600, 700, and 800 yards. All hits, confident. Textbook. The second candidate, a corpsman named Wu, hit 600 and 700, but missed at 8. He was eliminated immediately, his face a mask of devastation as he walked off the range. They went through the rotation. Some succeeded, others failed. The pressure mounted with each shooter. Then it was Sarah's turn. She approached the Barrett like an old friend, though she'd never actually fired one before. Her father had only owned hunting rifles, nothing this massive. The .50 caliber was a monster, designed to destroy vehicles and penetrate walls. In skilled hands, it could reach targets at distances that seemed impossible. 600 yards. She settled in, controlled her breathing, squeezed. The rifle roared, the target sang. 700 yards. Adjust for wind, breathe, squeeze, hit. 800 yards. This was where many had failed. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, feeling the air, reading the invisible currents. She heard her father's voice. "The wind is a river, Sarah. You don't fight it. You ride it." She squeezed. Hit. "Keep going, Chen," Carver shouted. 900. 900 yards. The target was barely visible now, shimmering in the heat and fog. Sarah made her adjustments, waited for her moment, fired. Hit. 1,000. Carver's voice carried excitement now. The other candidates had stopped their own preparations to watch. 1,000 yards. This was beyond hunting. This was surgical. Sarah laid behind the Barrett, her body becoming an extension of the weapon. She calculated windage, elevation, even the Earth's rotation, details her father had made her memorize until they became instinct. The trigger broke. 2 seconds later, the time it took the bullet to travel, the distant steel plate rang out clearly. 1,100! Sarah didn't respond to Carver's challenge. She simply continued, mechanical in her precision. Her mind entered a state her father had called the quiet place, where thought disappeared and only action remained. 1,100. Hit. 1,200. Chen, 1,200 yards. Nobody's hit this today. 1,200 yards, 3/4 of a mile. At this distance, you weren't just shooting a rifle. You were negotiating with physics, playing chess with the universe. Sarah made her final adjustments, whispered a silent prayer to her father, and squeezed. The seconds stretched into eternity. Then, ping, clear as a bell. Impossible and yet real. The range fell silent. Even Carver seemed stunned. The other candidates stared at Sarah like she'd just performed magic. When she stood and stepped back from the rifle, her legs were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of having touched perfection. Lieutenant Commander Hawthorne appeared from somewhere in the observation area. He walked to Sarah and extended his hand. "Your father would be proud," he said quietly. Sarah shook his hand, tears suddenly burning in her eyes. "Yes, sir, I hope so." The graduation ceremony took place on a Friday morning under cloudless California skies. Sarah Chen stood in formation with 2 other survivors of the selection course, Petty Officer First Class Marcus Webb, a former SEAL corpsman, and Lieutenant Junior Grade David Kowalski, an intelligence officer who'd proven himself exceptional under pressure. 23 had started. 3 remained. Master Chief Carver stood before them, holding 3 small velvet boxes. Behind him, a crowd of Navy personnel, instructors, and invited guests had gathered. Sarah spotted Chief Morrison in the back, arms crossed, face unreadable. Lieutenant Commander Hawthorne stood front and center, his dress whites immaculate, his expression proud. "These 3 individuals have completed the most demanding selection course in naval special warfare," Carver announced, his voice carrying across the compound. "They have demonstrated not only physical capability but mental fortitude, tactical intelligence, and the moral character required to carry out precision operations in defense of this nation. Sarah's mother sat in the front row of guest seating, tears already streaming down her face. She'd flown in from Montana 2 days ago, her first time leaving the state since Sarah's father had died. When she'd seen Sarah in uniform, not culinary whites but combat fatigues, she'd broken down completely. Your father knew, her mother had whispered that night over dinner. He knew you were special. He told me before he died, Sarah's got a gift. Don't let her bury it. She'd clutched Sarah's hand. I'm sorry I pushed you toward safety. I was scared. But I see now. This is who you were always meant to be. Carver opened the first box and approached Webb. Petty Officer Webb, for exceptional performance during selection, you are hereby designated as Precision Marksman, Naval Special Reconnaissance Unit. He pinned the insignia, a modified SEAL trident with a crosshair overlay, to Webb's chest. The crowd applauded. Webb saluted crisply. Carver moved to Kowalski, repeating the ceremony. Then he turned to Sarah. The world seemed to slow down. Every sound became amplified. The rustle of flags in the breeze, the distant crash of ocean waves, her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Carver held the third insignia, the metal gleaming in the sunlight. Petty Officer Chen, Carver said, his granite face softening almost imperceptibly. You came to this program as a cook. You leave it as a warrior. Your performance during selection was nothing short of extraordinary. The 1,200-yard shot you made on day 12 set a course record that may never be broken. He paused. But more important than your shooting is your character. You never quit. You never complained. You lifted up your teammates when they struggled. You are precisely the kind of operator this unit needs. He pinned the insignia to her chest. The small piece of metal felt impossibly heavy, as if it contained the weight of all her father's dreams, all her own sacrifices, all the years she'd spent hiding who she really was. Congratulations, Precision Marksman Chen, Carver said. Then, quietly, so only she could hear, your father would be damn proud. Sarah saluted, fighting to keep her composure. The crowd erupted in applause. She saw Chief Morrison clapping slowly, nodding with what might have been respect. She saw her mother sobbing openly, clutching a photograph of Sarah's father, and she saw Hawthorne, standing tall, his eyes meeting hers with a message clear as words. This is just the beginning. After the ceremony, Sarah found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Other SEALs shook her hand, men who'd watched her journey from skeptical distance, who'd seen her prove herself repeatedly, who now accepted her as one of their own. Not everyone was congratulatory. She caught snippets of conversation from a group of older operators standing near the refreshment table. Affirmative action bullshit. Lowered standards. Wait until she's in combat and see if she holds up. Sarah forced herself to ignore them. She'd spent 6 months proving herself, but she knew the truth. She'd spend the rest of her career doing the same. Some people would never accept that a woman could belong in special operations. But she wasn't doing this for them. She was doing it for her father, for herself, and for every young girl who'd ever been told she wasn't strong enough, tough enough, man enough. Lieutenant Commander Hawthorne approached her as the crowd began to thin. Chen, walk with me. They moved away from the ceremony area, heading toward the shooting range where this had all begun 6 months ago. The place where she'd taken those first 2 shots that changed everything. Tomorrow you report to the team house, Hawthorne said. You'll meet the rest of the unit, 8 operators total, including you 3 graduates. We're small, highly specialized, and we operate in situations where conventional SEAL teams can't execute. He stopped walking and turned to face her. What I'm about to tell you is classified. We've been tracking a high-value target in North Africa for 8 months. Arms dealer, supplying weapons to terrorist cells across 3 countries. Intelligence places him in a compound in Libya. Heavy security, civilian presence, urban environment. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. When? Mission brief is Monday. Wheels up potentially by Friday. Hawthorne's expression was serious. Chen, I'm telling you this now because you need to understand. This isn't training anymore. This is real. People will be depending on you to make shots that could mean the difference between mission success and dead Americans. I need to know if you're ready. Sarah thought of her father, bleeding internally from cancer, still taking her to the mountains one last time to teach her wind reading. She thought of 6 months of hell during selection, of every moment she'd wanted to quit but hadn't. She thought of Chief Morrison's note. Give 'em hell. I'm ready, sir, she said firmly. Hawthorne studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Because the Navy's best couldn't track this target. Intelligence couldn't pin him down. Conventional forces can't touch him. He smiled slightly. But I'm betting the cook can. The mission brief took place in a windowless room inside the Naval Special Warfare compound. 8 operators sat around a conference table covered with maps, satellite imagery, and intelligence reports. Sarah recognized Webb and Kowalski from graduation. The other 5 were veterans, men with hard eyes and quiet confidence born from years of combat experience. Hawthorne stood at the head of the table, pointing to a satellite image of a 3-story building in downtown Tripoli. Target is Hassan Khalil, age 47, Syrian national. He's responsible for moving Russian weapons through North Africa into the hands of extremist groups. We've linked him to at least 4 attacks against U.S. interests, including the embassy bombing in Tunisia last year that killed 7 Americans. Sarah studied the image. The building was surrounded by other structures, all tightly packed in a dense urban neighborhood. Civilians would be everywhere. This wasn't a remote desert compound or a mountain cave. This was a city, alive with innocent people. Why can't we just capture him? Asked one of the veteran operators, a man named Richards with sergeant stripes and a thick southern accent. Why a kill mission? Because he's protected by the Libyan government, Hawthorne replied. Officially, we're not supposed to know he's there. If we send in a team for capture, it becomes an international incident. We need this to look like an accident, or at minimum, like it wasn't us. He pulled up another image, a long sight line from a building rooftop across the street. Chen, this is your shot. Sarah leaned forward. The distance marker on the image read 847 meters. The angle was downward, roughly 30 degrees. Wind data showed variable conditions, complicated by urban heat and building interference. The target appears on his balcony every morning at 0600 for exactly 4 minutes. Hawthorne continued. He smokes a cigarette, drinks coffee, makes phone calls. That's your window. 1 shot, precision kill, immediate extraction. The rest of the team provides overwatch and security. Richards looked at Sarah with undisguised skepticism. No offense, ma'am, but this is an actual mission. Not a training exercise. That's an 800-meter shot in an urban environment with civilians everywhere, and probably 30 seconds to execute before his security realizes what's happening. You sure you want the new graduate taking this? I'm sure, Hawthorne said flatly. Chen made a 1,200-meter shot during selection. This is well within her capability. Selection isn't combat, Richards pressed. When bullets are real and lives are on the line. Enough, Hawthorne cut him off. Chen is the shooter, end of discussion. Sarah felt the weight of every eye in the room. Webb gave her a slight nod of support. Kowalski looked nervous but trusting. The veterans remained stone-faced, waiting to see if she'd prove herself or become another cautionary tale about lowered standards. I can make the shot, sir, Sarah said quietly. Just get me in position. 4 days later, Sarah found herself on a C-130 transport aircraft flying over the Mediterranean Sea in darkness. The team was dressed in civilian clothes, jeans, t-shirts, local patterns. They'd infiltrate Libya, posing as journalists, carrying camera equipment that concealed their weapons. Sarah's rifle, a custom M24 sniper system, was broken down inside a photographer's equipment case. She sat alone near the rear of the aircraft, running through calculations in her mind. 847 meters. Downward angle requiring elevation adjustment. Urban wind patterns disrupted by concrete and steel. Morning light creating glare. 4-minute window. 1 shot. Her father's voice echoed, when the moment comes, don't think. Trust your training. Trust yourself. Webb slid into the seat beside her. You good? I'm good, Sarah replied. You know they're all watching you, right? The vets. They want to see if you break. Sarah turned to face him. And what do you think? Will I break? Webb smiled. Hell no. I watched you during selection. You're tougher than half those guys and smarter than the other half. He paused. Just remember, after you take the shot, we move fast. No hesitation, no looking back. We extract clean and disappear. I know the drill, Webb. Yeah, but knowing it and doing it are different things. First kill is different. Even when it's justified, even when it's righteous, it changes you. His expression grew serious. Just be ready for that. They arrived in Tripoli before dawn, moving through the city in a rental van that blended with local traffic. The safe house was a fourth-floor apartment in a building directly across from Hassan Khalil's compound. The sight line was perfect. Sarah would shoot from a bedroom window concealed by curtains, with the rifle resting on sandbags they'd brought in photography cases. By 0545, everything was in position. Richards and two other operators watched the street below for security threats. Kowalski monitored radio traffic. Webb stayed with Sarah, acting as spotter with a high-powered scope. Sarah assembled her rifle with practiced precision. Each piece fit together like components of her own body, familiar, trusted, essential. She loaded a single round into the chamber. More ammunition waited, but she wouldn't need it. One shot, one kill. That was the standard her father had taught her. That was the standard she'd demanded of herself. At 0558, the target's balcony door opened. "Stand by," Webb whispered. "Security sweep first. 2 guards checking the balcony." Sarah settled into position, her breathing already controlled, her heart rate dropping into the operational range she'd trained for. Through her scope, she could see the balcony clearly. Ornate iron railing, potted plants, expensive furniture. The guards checked corners, looked over edges, then retreated inside. "Target emerging," Webb said. "You've got tone." Hassan Khalil stepped onto the balcony. He was shorter than Sarah expected, maybe 5'7", wearing a white dress shirt and slacks. He lit a cigarette and pulled out his phone. To anyone watching, he looked like a businessman starting his day. But Sarah knew what he was, a merchant of death responsible for American blood spilled across 3 continents. She adjusted for windage. The morning air was relatively calm, but heat rising from the street below created a mirage effect that required compensation. Her father had taught her how to read these invisible currents, how to feel the bullet's path before firing. 847 meters, Webb confirmed. Wind 2.3 from the northeast. Temperature rising. Pressure stable. You have a clear shot. Sarah's world narrowed to the crosshairs in her scope. The target moved slowly, phone to his ear, cigarette dangling from his other hand. Civilians walked the street below. A mother with 2 children, an old man with a cart, normal people living normal lives, unaware of the violence about to erupt above them. 90 seconds left in the window, Webb said calmly. Sarah found her breathing rhythm. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Between heartbeats, in that fraction of a second pause where the body achieves perfect stillness, that's where the shot lives. Her father had taught her that. Now, 6,000 miles from Montana, and 3 years after his death, she would prove his teaching one final time. Hassan Khalil turned slightly, presenting a 3/4 profile. Perfect angle, perfect position. Sarah's finger rested lightly on the trigger. She felt, rather than heard, her father's voice one last time. "Make it count, Sarah. Every shot has to matter." The trigger broke clean. The rifle barked. 847 meters away, through morning air and urban chaos, the bullet found its target with surgical precision. Hassan Khalil dropped instantly, his coffee cup shattering on the balcony floor, his phone clattering against iron railing. "Confirmed kill," Webb said emotionlessly. "Break down and move." Sarah's hands were already disassembling the rifle, each movement automatic, mechanical. The entire team was in motion, packing gear, destroying evidence, preparing to abandon the safe house. Within 90 seconds, they were out the door, moving down the stairs in practiced formation. Behind them, across the street, sirens began to wail. Security guards rushed onto the balcony. But by then, the American operators were gone, disappearing into Tripoli's morning traffic like ghosts who'd never existed at all. On the flight back to the United States, Sarah sat alone again, staring at her hands. They looked the same fingers, same calluses, same small scar on her left thumb from a kitchen accident years ago. But something fundamental had changed. She'd taken a life. The decision had been righteous, the target legitimate, the mission necessary. But Webb had been right. It changed you. Hawthorne approached and sat down beside her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, First kill is always the hardest, even when you know it was right. Does it get easier? Sarah asked quietly. No, Hawthorne replied honestly. But you learn to carry it. You learn to remember why you do this. Not for glory, not for recognition, but to protect people who'll never know your name. He paused. Your father carried 347 kills. You think that was easy for him? Sarah shook her head. He had nightmares. Even years later, he'd wake up sometimes, sweating, shaking. She looked at Hawthorne. But he still taught me. He still believed in this. Because he understood something important, Hawthorne said. The ability to take life isn't something to celebrate. But in a world where evil exists, where bad people hurt innocent people, someone has to stand in the gap. Someone has to be willing to do the hard thing. He met her eyes. That someone is you now, Chen. Welcome to the life. 2 years later, Sarah Chen had completed 17 missions across 4 continents. Her reputation within naval special warfare was legendary, the cook who became the deadliest shooter in the unit. But she never forgot where she came from. Once a month, she still visited the Coronado Galley kitchen, helping with breakfast service, wearing her old culinary uniform, reminding herself that titles and rankings don't define worth. Chief Morrison retired and opened a restaurant in San Diego. At the grand opening, he insisted Sarah be the guest of honor. When she arrived, she found a photograph hanging on the wall, her at the shooting range 6 months into selection, taking that impossible 1,200-meter shot. Below it, a plaque read, "Sometimes the greatest warriors come from the most unexpected places." Sarah kept her father's scout sniper pin in her pocket during every mission. Before each shot, she'd touch it and whisper the same words. "This one's for you, Dad. Every shot matters." The Navy's best couldn't hit it, but the cook could, because she'd learned that your current position in life doesn't determine your potential. Your courage does. Your dedication does. Your willingness to honor the gifts you've been given does. And sometimes, the person who serves you breakfast at 0600 might be the same person who saves your life by 0601. If you believe courage has no gender and that potential has no rank, drop honor in the comments below. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that where you start doesn't define where you finish.